Hi everyone, this is Naomi Wood. It's the sixth day that I'm trying to raise awareness before I head to Washington D.C. in May. And while I'm in Washington D.C., I'll be there for 1 week meeting with survivors of institutional child abuse. I'll be meeting with members of Congress and hopefully meeting with some other leaders in this effort and field, which is advocating for youth rights in residential programs throughout the United States. Um, as many of you know, or perhaps some of you don't know, my sister Naomi Wood, who is here on this page, passed away on May 19th, 2020, as a result of medical neglect and child abuse while she was in a residential program. And since the time that Florida DCF released a public fatality summary on her death, I have been very troubled and eager to see to it that nobody else suffers in the way that my sister did, and see to it that no other family suffers like my family has suffered through this process. One of the goals and things that I will be hopefully doing while I'm in DC is advocating for a new federal bill that's going to be designed to protect vulnerable youth in programs like the one that Naomi was in. And I also hope to be able to network with leaders and strong voices in the field so that I can carry on this work even beyond my trip to DC. Today's video, I wanted to take the time to explain a little bit about my frustration and confusion about the way that Naomi's death has been explained by the local authorities that investigated her death. So if we look here on this page, this is a screenshot of the autopsy report that was done for Naomi after she died. And a little backstory about this is that Naomi was at Lake and Girls Academy for 3 months, 3.5 months, and all seemed to be well with her. I was not aware that she was having any issues or medical issues, and on the 19th we got a phone call that she had died suddenly and for unknown reasons. Nobody really knew why she died. EMS found her in cardiac arrest when they arrived, but at the time it was inconclusive, and so my family ended up waiting roughly 6 months for this autopsy report to come back in the hopes that it would explain why she died. And it came back explaining to us that Naomi had died of a seizure disorder. So if you look down here at the bottom, it says down here that Naomi died as a result of a seizure disorder. But I'm just going to read this paragraph here at the top for you. According to medical records, the descendant had complained of not feeling well and was found unresponsive by staff at the group home where she lived. Her downtime was unknown. She has a history of an isolated seizure in the unknown past. She was a prior LSD and marijuana user-abuser, but has not used either since February 2020. She had been vomiting for 2 days prior to her death and was given Pepto-Bismol, Bismuth. She was transported via EMS to Lakeland Regional Health Medical Center and subsequently died as an inpatient there. Postmortem toxicologic analysis failed to detect any volatiles in her blood or urine, including no ethanol. So then there's like several drugs, typical drugs that would be found in an overdose, and none of that was found in her blood system. And then as a result, the medical professional concluded that Naomi died as a result of seizure disorder and that the manner of death is natural. At the time, I don't think we really had trouble accepting this because this was all the knowledge and information that we had at the time. So it felt like it made sense. But if we move on to A different report that was released by Florida DCF in roughly June 2021, which was another 6 or 7 months after the autopsy report came out. There was a lot said in the DCF report, but I'm going to read this because I think this section is very critical. It says the child, referring to Naomi, got physically ill and was vomiting on the evening of May 18th, 2020, and continued to be ill throughout the night and following day, May 19th, 2020. Staff members made the child get up for meals and fed her soup, as that is their protocol when children are sick. They also prayed for her to get better. Facility staff did not seek any medical attention for the child until she was found in her room unresponsive. On May 19th, 2020, the child was found unresponsive in her room and 911 was called at 6:15 p.m. CPR was performed until EMS arrived. The child passed away while being transported by EMS to Lakeland Regional Medical Center. Naomi Wood was pronounced deceased at 7:16 p.m. The child asked to be seen by a doctor in April for chronic stomach pain, but was not taken to the doctor. Since being at the facility, the child had received Pepto-Bismol approximately 20 times to address her stomach issues. It goes on to say that she was never taken to a physician on the next page. But when this report came out, it sort of like, I've said this before, but it blew any trust that we had in Teen Challenge out of the window, because it was a completely different narrative than we were told. When Naomi died, we were told that she had vomited once, maybe twice, and didn't seem to be struggling that much. But with this report, it became clear to us that Naomi, one, had been sick for at least 24 hours, had vomited several times before dying, and that she had some sort of chronic stomach pain starting at least in April 2020. We also found out that she was being given Pepto-Bismol pretty regularly. And so this caused us to be really disturbed and shocked, because it no longer was a situation in which Naomi sort of just passed peacefully in her sleep. In the confidential version of this report, there are witnesses, and this is also confirmed in Polk County police investigation. Witnesses state that Naomi vomited 8 times on the evening of May 18th, that she continued to vomit throughout the night and through the next day. So I would estimate that she vomited 12 to 15 times in 24 hours. I also spoke with somebody familiar with the situation, a direct witness, and she said that Naomi had asked to be brought to the hospital the night before she died because she knew that something was wrong and that she was scared. And that request was denied as well. One question that I had immediately about this report after reading it was in regards to Pepto-Bismol. And Pepto-Bismol is an over-the-counter medicine. But on the warning label of Pepto-Bismol is a note about not giving this medicine to children with recurring stomach pain, and it also warns people to stop giving it to them if their symptoms continue or worsen, and to especially stop if they're having diarrhea or issues of vomiting, because the use of Pepto-Bismol in the youth, if it's used repeatedly, can induce what's known and called Rise syndrome. Rise syndrome is a syndrome that causes very, very severe and potentially lethal illness in younger people if it's not addressed quickly. And one of the things that Rise syndrome can cause is seizure. So this was a big question that I had immediately. And unfortunately, nobody that I've spoken to has been able to tell me what an overdose of Pepto Bismol would look like on a toxicology or autopsy report. Um, so I would say personally, like I I feel that um, it makes it makes more sense to think that something led up to her death, given the backstory and the symptoms, than to believe that uh, none of the preceding symptoms contributed to her death. And that brings me to the next slide. So I'm going to read through this. In the days and hours before Naomi's death, numerous requests for medical services were made by herself, her friends, and some staff members. Naomi died as a consequence of those denials for medical services. Investigations were conducted by the relevant authorities, and no charges were filed or arrests made. I cannot say I understand why action was not taken by law enforcement. It remains a mystery to me. My best estimate is that certain facts were mistakenly interpreted, namely that the seizure listed in the opinion of Dr. Stephen J. Nelson when he found evidence for a seizure at the time of Naomi's death was viewed as and taken to be the cause of death rather than the final straw in a series of events that constituted a 36-hour lethal but avoidable medical emergency that was repeatedly and willfully ignored by a Lakeland Teen Challenge. With the information now available, as I best understand the facts, the public must choose and be led to believe one of two medical explanations for Naomi's death. Either we must believe A, that her vomiting, her panic attacks, her difficulty breathing. I want to stop there for a second, actually. So, in talking with witnesses about what happened the night that Naomi died, several people confirmed that Naomi was really struggling with her ability to breathe. She was having trouble breathing, and she had 2 or 3 panic attacks that night. And this was an instance where requests were made to upper level staff members that she be brought to the hospital, and it was denied. So I'll start over. Either we must believe A, that her vomiting, her panic attacks, her difficulty breathing, her conscious pain, her conscious suffering, and her conscious terror experienced just hours and minutes before her death contributed nothing to the deadly seizure, or B, that her vomiting, her panic attacks, her difficulty breathing, her conscious pain, her conscious suffering, and her conscious terror experienced just hours and minutes before her death contributed everything, or something, to the deadly seizure. I do not see how it could be any other way. Either the symptoms led to a deadly seizure, or they did not. I must also add that Naomi was not diagnosed with epilepsy, and that sudden death during or immediately after seizure, commonly referred to as SUDEP, happens so infrequently that for every 1,000 people with epilepsy, there are 1.16 cases, which is less than 1%. The probability that Naomi was going to die from a seizure with no contributing symptoms was incalculably low. That is, unless something else, ignored preceding symptoms, caused her seizure. Lakeland Teen Challenge was in complete custody and responsibility for Naomi. Lakeland Teen Challenge is therefore 100% at fault and liability for her death. So, I think that's a pretty long-winded way of me saying that it's even almost after 2 years, I struggle to make sense of Naomi's death, and I don't think that's for superfluous or unnecessary reason. I think the questions I have are reasonable. The other thing I want to talk about before I end the video today is something more personal. It's it's an experience that I had today with a family member, and it's very sad. I got a text message from my mother today, um, of her saying that she misses Naomi with an emoji of somebody crying, and getting that text message was really difficult, because this process of grieving has been very, very, very difficult. Um, Not simply because Naomi is no longer with us, but because we have not been able to find closure about her death. Um, I think it's I think part of the inability to find closure comes from the frustration of knowing that we are in a situation where an explanation for her death does exist somewhere. I think like there's enough information somewhere where somebody could provide us with a logical explanation for why she died and how she died. And I don't think we have experienced that explanation yet. After I got that text message, I ended up calling my mom to check in with her and see how she was doing. And um, she's fine now. Um, but I spent a few minutes just listening to her cry about Naomi being gone, and it's. I was talking to somebody else that I feel like it would be part of the pain and difficulty in accepting this situation comes from the fact that, again, one, we don't have the closure we're looking for in terms of knowing why she died or how she died, but two, we haven't really experienced any sort of acknowledgement the from the people responsible for Naomi at the time of her death, which was Lakeland Teen Challenge. I think having that sort of like apology or acknowledgement, if you will, withheld from us has been really difficult. Teen Challenge did reach out to us when Naomi died initially and extended their condolences, but we have not heard from them since the DCF report came out in terms of condolences or apologies. And I think that silence is very hard for us, particularly for me, because um, reading the DCF report that's available online, I think is hard for anyone, but it's really hard for us to read and um, to know that yeah, we could probably be alive right now. That's kind of it for today. It's a little bit more morbid, but that's just kind of what's on my heart. I know that several people have asked me how they can support me. I think right now the best way to do that is to like, share, and comment on these posts. If you comment, something you can do is tag one or two people or more than that and type next to their name #JusticeForNaomi. The people that have done this have helped me network with new people, and so I've been able to make new acquaintances and new connections that way, so it's very helpful when people do that. The other thing you can do to help out right now is go follow the nonprofit Unsilenced. They're a nonprofit that is working to introduce new federal legislation, and um, while they're focusing on institutional child abuse and preventing that right now, I think that they also have ambitions to address community needs in the sense that they want to empower communities to empower their youth before young people are sent away to programs. It's a great group. Um, it's a group with a mission close to my heart, so give them a follow.